Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to the Vic Akers Wonderland Road to Stadium Australia podcast. Round 3 is well underway. We've had some shocks, we've had some surprises, we've had some knockouts and qualifications. And to pick apart what the story is so far, we have with me once again my two co-spiriters in crime, two amazing co-hosts, the lovely Matt and the amazing Lottie. Matt, how's it going?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, it's been intense. This actually, I mean, we didn't realize with podcast recording just how much there is to talk about, how many games to talk about. But it's been good fun, and we've seen some great matches on the way. Lots to talk about, and I can't wait to pick it apart with you two. Lottie, still hanging in there? Still fighting a good fight?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still on cloud 9 after the Rachel Daly volley. If you haven't checked out the England pod, make sure you go and find out what we were talking about. I'm good. It's good vibes all around.
It is good vibes all around. Lots to talk about, and we're going to start with Group A. So this was Group A. This was the hosts, New Zealand. Now they wowed us all when they beat Norway in their opening game, and then had a bit of a slip up when they then lost to the Philippines. So it all came down to the final round of fixtures. Norway played the Philippines, while Switzerland played New Zealand. And for New Zealand, it wasn't a good ending. I think we can all agree. It was a 0-0 draw against Switzerland, a result which in isolation is pretty good for a team like New Zealand, but it wasn't enough to get through as Norway thrashed the Philippines 6-0. I'm going to start with you, Matt. Did you were you hoping? I know you're a Leo Volti fan, so this is probably kind of a conflict of interest here. But were you hoping maybe New Zealand could maybe cause another surprise and maybe get through to the next round?
I was actually hoping this one was going to be a end-to-end game with a lot of spectacle to it, but unfortunately, it was almost like a very disappointing fireworks display. Just nothing really happened of real interest, and it seems to be. It was just a real shame, really, because Switzerland have only scored two goals, both of them being against the Philippines, and that's really it. Nothing else. They have that. They basically gotten through with 2 goals in the group, and that's it. It just stinks of you get through the group somehow, but where's the progress? They look really flat when they're going forward. They don't seem to know how to score goals, and it is a real worry ahead of their game. Okay, they qualified, but I think if I'm honest, I think they can count themselves lucky that they're not going home.
I do feel there's an element of maybe getting through by default rather than any amazing skills. So they won their first game and then have just nil-nilled their way over the line. And to top the group with 5 points, I mean, I think it maybe speaks more of the quality, or rather lack of quality in the group. Lottie, losing to the Philippines in their second game, this tournament, it's a missed opportunity for one of New Zealand, isn't it? They probably should have got out of the group, which would have been incredible.
Absolutely. As a host, you expect them to get out of the group, but as we all know, New Zealand is a rugby and cricket nation. To have record crowds there since the men's team played there is absolutely, it's an incredible milestone in terms of developing in football. I think it's a case of they need to. If you look across that team, they all do their trade outside of New Zealand. There is no football there. They all do their trade overseas and then they come back. I mean, you look at the cost of Manny Riley's in the US. CJ Bott is here and in England, and you look across that list and there's many more that are spread across that you maybe think, oh, I didn't know that person was Kiwi, so to speak. Which I was surprised when I was going through that list properly, and I saw faces and I'm like, I know who you are. But when it's a name on a bit of paper, you just not too sure, if you know what I mean. But yeah, no, they've scored their first goals Bear in mind, it's taken them 3 tournaments to do this. This is their 3rd tournament, and they're the hosts.
Yeah.
They got their first winning points as well, and they've got their first clean sheet, which is absolutely incredible for them, and which I expected. But I did expect them to get out the group, so it's probably really disappointing, especially with everything that did go on just before the World Cup kicked off.
Yeah.
So it's a bit disappointing for New Zealand. But I hope they come back and they qualify again and they've learned lessons from this and they can progress and grow some more and definitely inspire future generations of New Zealanders.
I mean, they need to find another goal scorer other than Wilkinson. I mean, that's probably one of the main things to look at first.
Absolutely. You shut her down, there's nothing there.
Absolutely. And they should. I mean, Philippines. They finished bottom of the group. They didn't score a goal. I mean, they scored 1 goal against New Zealand, but they didn't get a win. They got a win, but they finished bottom of the group. New Zealand should have beaten the Philippines. That was the tournament. And the moment they lost that game, they were out of the tournament, sadly. And I feel if there was any time they're going to get out of the group, it was going to be this tournament. They got the home advantage. They got the home crowd. They've won their first game against Norway, which probably, if you take Hegel-Riise out of the equation, you look at the team and think that's the big team of the group and that's the big scalp. And they've done all the hard work. And when they've got the one team that they were supposed to beat before, taking away all the rankings and stuff, they slipped up, lost 1-0 to the Philippines. Amazing moment for the Philippines. Take nothing away from them. Incredible moment for them. First win, first points, debut and all that. It's just, for the hosts. And it's the first time the host nation at the Women's World Cup hasn't made it out of the group. And I always feel that does tinge a tournament slightly when a host doesn't get out. Obviously, in this case, this is a dual host tournament, and we'll cover what happened to Australia shortly. In the other game, as I said, New Zealand didn't go out because Norway did go through 6-0 against the Philippines. Matt, where's this team been all this time?
I think a lot of things have been said, a lot of speculation about what's going on behind closed doors. If I'm honest, knowing some of these players, not by what has been said or anything, and especially Frieda and Hart and Mornham as well. Knowing the way she basically wears her heart on the sleeve, and if something's not going right, you know it. You've seen it sometimes at Arsenal. She doesn't really sulk. She's sort of a bit agitated. She doesn't seem, but she has it. But she doesn't try to shy away. She only shies away if she's been blocked out the game. And essentially, it was almost like Norway turned around and gone, you know what? It's only the Philippines. Just see what happens. And just all of a sudden, just the goals started going in, and it was one after another. And it was just, I felt more sorry for the Philippines because it's their debut World Cup, and it just feels like you don't want to go out losing 6 and 7-0 like that. It was
a very bad night for the Philippines, and it is a shame because it was their debut tournament, and up until then they could actually still have got out of the group. They're 3 points on the board. If they got something positive about the Norway game, and there was a moment there, it was goal difference, and it was like, well, if Norway only win 1-0, New Zealand could still do it, and then I think it was pretty much within 17 minutes it was all over. The scorers, the main thing was Sophie Hull, because he got a hat trick. Graham Hansen got on the act as well, and a penalty from Guru Wrighton, and there was a fortunate own goal from Barker. Philippines, to make things worse, had a player sent off, Harrison. I think she just come off the bench and was involved with a very nasty sort of scrape down the ankle that got missed the first time round, but VAR picked it up. And it just sort of felt like it was sort of one bad moment after the other for the Philippines. Just snowballed. In the second half, all composure went out the window. So they scored the own goal, see the penalty, got the player sent off, and Norway scored 6. And I think it probably could have been more. Lottie, we know Norway's got the talent, Aga Hegerberg, Carla Graham Hansen, Judson Morgan, Wrighton, and more. But they are managed by Hegel-Riise, and as England fans of Team GB, we know what her managerial style, shall we say, is, and how, well, I wouldn't say successful it is, but we know sort of what it does. What it's like. Norway, are they on the up? Are they back to being challengers again, or is this a one-off?
I honestly can say I don't know, because obviously Frieda Mornham has had an absolute epic season at Arsenal. For me, she's really shone out bright, and now she's a shadow of the player she was in season. So I think there's a lot of questions around what is going on in that locker room, for the way that Caroline Graham-Hampson reacted, and then her next day apology. But the picture, when you see Caroline talking to the press, Reese is sitting there standing smug, like, yes, I've won this for me. And I think a picture paints 1,000 words, but this is just speculation on my part. There is something more going on in the background for me. I know there's a few people in Woto who have agreed with that, but obviously we're not behind closed doors, so we can only speculate.
No, we're not.
There's something that's not triggering right with that team with the amount of talent. Yes, they beat Philippines 6-0, but what happened to Switzerland? What happened to New Zealand?
Exactly.
You're turning up at last minute, and that won't be enough. That won't be good enough for knockouts now. They need to turn up for every single game, otherwise they're going out. End of story. And we get freedom on and back for pre-season.
Well, I mean, that is
and
the advantage.
We
get the answer more than back.
I mean, we've got three of our girls already on their way home. So whether they stay out there and have an extended holiday, who knows? But 3 will be back for the Champions League qualifying at this stage.
I was very frustrated about this as well, because I think as an England fan of watching what happened with Team GB at the Olympics, and some of the players Risa decided to leave behind, shall we say, and how much that's been well documented. I found seeing how Noy struggled in the first 2 games wasn't a surprise, and I felt it would have. I don't want to say it's fair on the players, because I think the players deserve better, and I do feel there is something wrong there. And I think had Norway gone out at the group stage, I think it would have shone a greater light on that team, which I think is needed, because there's a lot of talent there. And certainly the way they played, I mean, obviously I know it's before Reese's time, but I mean, at the Euros, when they got battered 8-0 by England, I mean, it was an unacceptable performance by a team with that much talent. But they are through. So, Reese is justified, I suppose, in her position, leading the team. They got the win. They're through into the knockout rounds, but don't think Switzerland and Norway are through. Do we see either of them going further in the tournament? Matt, I'll come to you first. Can we see a Swiss lift the World Cup at all, you reckon? Or is it semi-final, quarterfinals, maybe last 16 for them?
With the opposition they faced, no.
No. Lottie, can you see Norway going far? Or is it going to be a last 16 knockout?
Absolutely not. Australia are not going to have it. And if Queen Sam Kerr is back, they're in major trouble.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say Queen. I should say poster girl for the tournament, and I really hope she gets some minutes. I really do. But again, Australia have been really tight-lipped about her fitness. But I think Australia aren't going to roll over like the Philippines. No disrespect to the Philippines, but yeah, they're not. They're not going to find the next game easy.
We're quite right to mention that, because our next port of call is Australia, which we will cover right after this break.
And Coulthard plays with the Doncaster Bells, has an opportunity early in the second half to give England the lead.
Back to part 2. We're going to pick apart Group B. So this was the other host nation. This was Australia against likes of Canada, Ireland, and Nigeria. And like New Zealand, Australia did slip up on their second group game against Nigeria, which left the group rather intriguingly placed. Australia played Canada, the Olympic gold medal champions, and Ireland were playing off against Nigeria. Ireland, sadly, already out of the World Cup with those 2 defeats. But a strong showing from the Irish nonetheless. And they finished their World Cup with a 0-0 draw against Nigeria. But it very nearly wasn't, thanks to an incredible intervention from the Irish keeper, Matt. Save the tournament so far?
I think the best way was, I believe it was Pine Matheson on the commentary. She made
Pian Wallenstein.
Thank you. I always get it wrong. I always get a name wrong. Pian. She basically described it as Gordon Banks-esque. So basically, in Mexico 70, Pele rises up with a header, and he thinks it's going in right into the bottom corner. Gordon Banks just basically puts his hand on the line, ball bounces up and out over the crossbar and goes away for a corner. Very similar sort of circumstances for this one. It was just cross comes in, header goes down. You think it's going to go in, and just Courtney Brosnan just gets a hand on it, and it just the physics of the ball just defied the laws of physics. It's just a brilliant save, and I think that I know Ireland won't be happy with how things have gone, but if you're talking about moments, this is probably up there with the Casey McCabe goal, the chances that Ireland had in that first game with Louise Quinn, with Casey McCabe. These are all moments that will be like Lauren McCabe and her fellow internationals will be like, I want to be able to have my own moment at that World Cup. And I think that Ireland can be proud of how they've done, and those sort of moments are just great to have. It's just a shame, really, that their story has come to an end.
They did get a bit unlucky with the group drawn, in fairness. I mean, in the group with the hosts, Canada and Nigeria, it was always going to be an uphill task for them. I do hope they qualify again. I hope Katie McCabe gets another World Cup. She deserves it. But they've left their mark on the tournament with that incredible Olympico goal, which just they're amazing to watch. They happen like unicorn. We don't see them many often, but when they do, they're special. And that was a very special goal. And like I said, that save at the end. But it's a point. It's a clean sheet. It's the first World Cup for the Irish. Hopefully we see them again soon. And hopefully they can get a win next time they qualify. But it's obviously a growing nation of footballers. There's a lot of talent in there, and there's a lot more talent coming through. You see it like
I think.
So forth.
Sorry, Adam. I just want to add to that. I think it's not. Although it seems like a negative experience now, you need to think about they've qualified for their first World Cup. They've scored a worldie in their first World Cup.
Yes.
And they managed to take away a minimum of 1 point. Yes. So in the next 4 years, their next aim is to win a game. I think, for me, and just taking them tiny steps at a time. Because once you win one game, you want to win the next and the next. It's sort of a rolling sort of stone sort of thing. But I think they were brilliant. I am so incredibly proud of our Katie. I mean, she led the country. Even speaking in our post-match interview after Nigeria, I mean, it's bittersweet for them at this point. But hopefully, she did enjoy her pint down the pub after that. So, yeah, I hope they keep kicking on, and they start qualifying for other tournaments. You never know, you might see them in the Euros.
That would be great as well if you could see them in the Euros, at the Euros or the World Cup, because we need more Katie McCabe at tournaments. The player of that caliber.
Absolutely, tournament Katie McCabe is amazing alongside Denise Sullivan.
And I mean, I'll look at our Arsenal captain Kim Little, such a talented player, but denied so much time at tournaments, mixture of injury and the fact of Scotland hardly ever qualifying, is almost criminal. So best of luck. Thanks for the memories, Ireland, and best of luck for the next tournament. Hopefully we'll see you there soon. The other game in the group stole all the goals, and that was Australia. I mean, where do we begin with this one? Firstly, Canada. I mean, I had such high hopes for Canada. I did a talk with She's Called Bangers in the build-up. Yeah, we did a preview pod. I hope you were able to tune in and listen to it. It was very interesting. Talking about Canada, talking about the Olympics, talking about the issues behind the scenes with the Canadian FA. And they come into this tournament with experience. They come into this tournament with the best striker in history, in Christian Sinclair, and a team that usually gets out the group. And I thought going into this game against Australia, they had four points on the board, I think it was. 4 points on the board. And they looked well set to get out the group. They just had to overcome the hosts. And all I can say is they were an absolute shambles. Australia had them on toast for 90 minutes. Rasso with a brace should have been more than that. Fowler 58 could have won if it wasn't for unlucky with an offside. And of course the wonderful Steph Catley with an amazing penalty with pretty much the last kick of the game. But I mean, Matt, Canada, I mean, this was meant to be the most defensively solid team of the World Cup. People were saying, "Oh, Canada's going to be tough to break down. You're going to struggle to score against them." I mean, it took a worldie from McCabe to do it in the previous in the second round, and then I think in the first round, I think it was they got a clean sheet against Nigeria, and I think they were maybe a bit unlucky not to get the win there. But what happened?
Well, first and foremost, Steph Catley is wonderful.
She is wonderful, absolutely.
Yes, you look at Canada, and there's issues throughout. It's not just only their international team; it's their youth academy. Their youth teams have failed to qualify out of the groups, which seems to tell you that the we've talked about this on as well. Through She Scores Bangers. It's a great watch for those that haven't. Please go and watch it back. You've also got when we talked about it ourselves on the Fallout as well. Please go back and watch that as well, because it was key to the. It's kind of key to this sort of situation. Canada have basically been the torchbearers along with the US and the Scandinavians. As champion, as well as Brazil as well, because they can basically, they are champions of football, whether it's Olympic champions or it's world champions or it's being closely fought out for their regional title. It seems like their national the FA have failed them. Bev Priestman, when you look and see the videos that she's put out, that the Canada FA put out, not the FA, on the original tweets, and she's sitting down and she's telling the players when they're going, if they're going or not, and she's got such an understanding with this group, and you thought this team could be doing something really special at this tournament. Okay, they've got to come up against Nigeria, Australia, and Ireland as well, but they can do it. And for whatever reason, albeit it might be behind the scenes that we won't know the full story, or we have some of the story, but not the full story to a full extent until maybe a couple of months down the line. Essentially, Canada are failing a generation because they're not putting money into their into the football. And if you're expecting Canada to go to the next World Cup, I wouldn't be surprised if there is no World Cup for them next time around, because if they're not putting the money in now, it's too little too late. And I think they've failed themselves because they've been failed to be able to prepare, as the old saying goes. And it's a real shame because Canada have always been a great watch at tournaments. And it's just a real shame that they've gone out like this. But you saw how Jessie Fleming was in tears. She was almost the fact that she was sort of in tears, still giving an honest interview about the trying to apologise to fans about the whole situation. It's not the players' fault that they've been let down. At the end of the day, other people have decided to break. I think that's right. Break their spirit. I know it sounds really random.
Canada's an interesting example of how to fail with a legacy. They had the World Cup. They hosted the World Cup. It was a good World Cup, and they did nothing with it. And I think that's absolutely criminal. They don't have their own league because they end up in sell. There's no investment. The money's all running out. They didn't have a pre-season final friendly playoff game like we did with the Portugal game. We didn't have a send-off game. The only warm-up I think they had was that 0-0 against us which I don't think was very competitive in that behind the closed doors game. From being Olympic champions to I would say limping out of the World Cup. I mean, we wouldn't have this argument if Christian Sinclair had scored that penalty against Nigeria, because they'd be on 6 points and they'd already be through. But based on sort of what we've seen over the three games, I don't think you can make a case that they deserve to go through. They just haven't been good enough. And I think there's an element of, if you're relying on Christine Sinclair, I mean, this is probably going to be her last, but it's got to be her last World Cup at this point in her career. And if you're relying on a player at that age, You shouldn't. I know she's great, but you shouldn't be. She should be the player coming off the bench. She shouldn't be the starting forward. I think by the end of Australia game, I think she was on the bench. I think by the end of it. But that's it. Chloe Lacasse, real shame we didn't get to see more of her. I was hoping to see more of our new forward signing. Hopefully we'll see more when we come back with Arsenal. Same with Sabrina. Obviously we knew Sabrina D'Angelo wasn't going to be the main starting keeper for Canada. As for Australia, I did when I saw that did give me hope for the England game, because it did seem in that game, even though Sam Kerr wasn't starting, she was on the bench, but she was back amongst the team. It did feel like the team had finally clicked, and I thought I'll hope for the same for England. As it turns out, it was the same for England. But Lottie, Catley and Foord, the left flank, we know how good it is for Arsenal. But how good was it in this game?
Do you know what? They were absolutely set that field alight. And it just shows you Australia aren't a one-woman team. Got to be honest with you. It's just, you know what? It works so well, and it's something we have the privilege to see week in, week out. And they have fully applied that to their advantage. They play with each other all year round, do you know what I mean, on the pitch, and it's just such an artwork. They were the best two players on that pitch for me, regardless of who scored goals or whatever, but they were the key to the undoing. Just touching back on Canada as well, really disappointed from them. I thought, again, this is one of the big fixtures that you want to be watching. So this was the one I watched over Nigeria and Republic of Ireland.
Good choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was undercover watching it on the iPad.
Yeah.
As usual. But I enjoyed every moment of that game. It was just absolutely brilliant. VAR decisions were interesting. The first one.
A few curious ones.
Looked offside to me.
Well, this is the beauty of thing is when it's on the angle and the TV angles, it looks, because you see it all the time in the Premier League, but the key is always not to look what you see, but to look at the lines on the pitch. And then when you get the virtual reality ultimate offside, you can see she's miles onside. And I think for me, when you see a decision like that and you see what it actually is in reality, that actually think, okay, that's a VAR thing when you say fair enough. That's an optical illusion I can develop.
The thing is, stuff like this. This is what I like about VAR. You can actually get the animations of where the lines are and where everything is. And I think that's the one thing I have enjoyed about this tournament, where you've got a mixed panel of VAR of male and female. I think there's a bit of voice of reason in the reason of the voice of reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the voice of logic and reason in there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not. I'm going to sound really sexist. It's not all guys in there. There's a mixture of both. And I think that brings a bit more balance for me personally. And, I'm enjoying having female referees. I'll be honest. I hold my hands up.
It's good. No,
so I have really enjoyed it, because they're clear cut. There's no decisions, and if the VAR room says you need to come look at the screen, it's done. There's no faffing around. Do you know what I mean? Rather than the ref standing going 1 minute listening to the explanation rather than going over to the screen. I've actually really enjoyed it. But yeah, no, it's just that game had everything you wanted in it. Disappointed in Canada, and it's really sad for Christine Sinclair, as it is her last World Cup. She is retiring from international football, and she will be greatly missed by Canada, I think.
And sadly, it was history missed for Sinclair. I did want to tap in some of the goal scorers. It was, as I said earlier, it was Brayson, Rasso, Fowler, and Catley. 3 of those 4 have had the fortune/misfortune of playing under Gareth Taylor at Man City. Rasso was there for 2 seasons and left. Fowler is at the moment. It does make you wonder why we don't see. Well, we never saw that from Rasso in the WSL, and then we haven't really seen Fowler play for Man City with WSL Live. It's quite clear that they are such exciting talents.
Yeah, absolutely. City have lost out there, losing Rasso. Absolutely lost out. I think it's Rasso. Hayley Rasso's moved, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She's
Madrid. So essentially,
they're gaining a phenomenal player.
are going slowly over to Madrid and actually shining for him. I mean, Caroline.
I'm actually quite looking forward to her linking up with Linda Casada now. That will be really interesting to see.
Absolutely.
Especially if she continues playing the way she does. I think City have really screwed up there. If they do lose Mary Fowler, you can rotate. I feel like they can rotate her in with Lauren Hemp. Lauren Hemp has played every single game for City. She hasn't had a break at all, including the Euros last summer. Like, you can see, we've seen in the first 2 England games, she's physically tired. So why not give Mary Fowler a shot? She's been brilliant for Australia.
So going through from that group were Australia and Nigeria. Big Nigeria, big result of Nigeria. 5 points. Pardon me. A point against Ireland, a point against Canada, and I think we can say it was probably a shock 3-2 win over Australia.
Absolutely. I mean, this tournament for the African nations has been absolutely massive. To have all 3 teams win a game for it's the first time in history, and that is absolutely massive progress for them. And I'm really excited for them all to come back. Obviously in the next World Cup, but for Nigeria to win this group, amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm really pleased for them. And
Nigeria came second. Sorry, Australia topped the group. Nigeria came second.
But
because
Nigeria, I take that back.
Yeah, but because Nigeria came second, they will play England in the next round of fixtures. I think that's going to be a very, very, very interesting game. Australia, I don't know off the top of my head who they've got now. I don't know if you know, Matt, do you know who it is? Denmark. Okay, right. So that's one to watch then. Australia versus Denmark. Well, we're going to come to that in our review the Denmark game, which we'll do later on. But until then, it's a quick break. Welcome back. Welcome back to part 3 of the show, where we're going to go through Group C. 2 games. They were Costa Rica, Zambia, and Japan, Spain. Lots of goals, lots of intrigue, and a bit of a shock along the way. Zambia and Costa Rica, they lost, sadly, both their games, and so this was sort of a wooden spoon avoidance playoff, which Zambia tried 3-1. But the big result, the big result of the group was Japan 4, Spain 0, a result I think none of us saw coming. We'll get to them in a bit, but first, Costa Rica, Zambia. We've spoken a bit about Canada being disappointing, and I think there have been a few disappointments in this World Cup. I had to put Zambia in there, and I know they're in a tough group, but I expected so much more of them, especially after they beat Germany in that friendly before the World Cup started, especially with the likes of Banda leaving the line. She did get on the score. She did get on the score sheet, rather.
But she did get the World Cup's 1,000th goal.
Yes, I was going to get... Fair play to Lottie, because I do often steal people's stats. So fair play to Lottie. She's stolen that one off me. So yeah, fair enough. I deserve that. Yeah, absolutely. Muiba got the ball rolling after 3 minutes, and as you say, Banda scored the 1,000th goal. It was a 31st minute penalty, bit of a dubious one given by VAR. Costa Rica got one back in the second half with Herrera, but Kudananji, apologies,
perfect.
Got a late third for Zambia in added time to kill the game off. It's a big result for Zambia. It's their first ever World Cup win, a sort of victory in defeat as a whole. I expected more from them, but Matt, thoughts on Zambia?
I think that when you know that you're out these sort of games, it's almost like you want to go out on a high. You don't want to leave it. You want to leave everything that out there on the pitch, and it doesn't seem like it was a mismatch. It was very much end to end, but Zambia had the best were better than Costa Rica on the day. There was no doubt about it. Costa Rica just didn't have any answers really towards what Zambia were throwing at them, and at the end of the day, Zambia were able to get the goals that they have been threatening, but weren't able to get in those first 2 games against Spain or Japan. And it's a huge step for them because it means that, okay, yep, they got their goals. It also means they got their first 3 points and they've got something to look forward to. I think they'll most likely now look towards Olympic qualification for Paris next year. It'll be similar sort of things you'd imagine for Costa Rica. Costa Rica will be very disappointed, but they'll probably be looking at Olympic qualification as well, seeing if that's doable. And hopefully they can go and get some more experience, because this is what they need. They need the experience to be able to grow and develop and make sure that maybe next time they are the ones that are going to cause more chaos in the group. Maybe they're the ones that are going to go and score 3 goals against the host nation, whoever it may be next time around, because that's still got to be decided for the World Cup.
I mean, my annoyance is that I put Banda in as my lead striker in my fantasy team, and this means that she's one of the many players I've got to swap out. So I've got to find an alternative striker. I don't think it's going to let me put Amanda Illestead up as a forward on the system. I don't think it will let me somehow, which is a shame. But no, Zambia, they depart, sadly. I had hoped for more, obviously, especially Banda getting 2 hat-tricks. Well, even I think it was a quadruple, I think it was against China in the Olympics. Such an amazing tournament there, and I was hoping maybe we'd see some of the chaos of the World Cup. Wasn't to be, but a first World Cup win, a massive stepping stone for them in their development going forward. And I think the AFCON will be interesting. The women's AFCON will be interesting for likes of Zambia, see how they do there, see how they develop. I don't think it's the last we'll see in the World Cup. As for Costa, 0 points, no wins, just the 1 goal. A very poor showing, although they were, like I said, in a very tough group with Spain. And it turns out, I think, what we can all agree is the surprise package of the World Cup, which is Japan, which I'm going to tap onto next. So Japan 4, Spain 0. This was a game I think we thought was going to be the most technical match of the World Cup so far. 2 teams going into the game, they'd racked up 5-0 wins already in the group stage, lots of goals, but the approach play, the passing, the movements, the free-flowing nature of football it was always so attractive to watch. You just wondered which one would be able to out-art the other one. And Matt, I don't think we were expecting this to be the answer.
Yes, I don't think we were expecting it. Also, I think we were expecting maybe a draw. They both knew they were through, so it didn't really matter who was going to be top or who was going to be bottom. It might matter more of them for pathway reasons. But Japan are slowly getting on people's radar. Well, not slowly. Slowly, they are getting on everyone's radar for certain reasons, and those reasons are the technical ability. And to put the sword to Spain like that, it's almost like you're showing the world how to play against Spain. And
which is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the Spain we're talking about.
It's such an oddity. I know who, when we were going through the groups, I said that Japan are going through a transitional phase. It seems like the transition has already happened, and they're slowly storming through this this phase that they weren't even supposed to be at yet. And if they're doing that, then honestly, they could end up being so dangerous. You don't know whether they're going to win these games 4 or 5, or they could win 1-0, because they are one of the only teams yet to concede at this tournament.
True, they have not, thanks to that penalty that China scored against us. Japan have kept 3 clean sheets. I think one of the few teams, maybe even their own team. There are still 3rd round games still to play. To keep clean sheet in every game. The goals, 2 for Miyazawa in the first half, and another from Uki, and Tanaka got 1 right at the end in a 4-0 win. It reminded me, to use a men's football comparison, to the time we went over to Spain in a Nations League game, and we got under Gareth Southgate and Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling and Marcus Rashford, racked up a 3-0 lead at half time with just these amazingly rapid counter-attacks. Spain would dominate the ball, they'd hem us in, and then quick ball forward, long ball forward, tap it round, and suddenly Rashford's clean through, putting us 2-0 up. And it was, I remember, one of the most amazing, crazy 45 minutes football I think I've ever watched as an England fan, going away to a place like Spain. We end up having to hang on for a 3-2 win. But that first half, just the way we were able to counter Spain and move through Spain and be ruthless, and I think that's what Japan was. I think they said in the commentary, 3 touches in the Spanish box, 3 goals. And the finishing was incredible. It was power, it was top corner, it was kind of the 4th goal, the way they sort of bent that one into the top corner, just ruthless efficiency from Japan. Whereas Spain, I mean, this is always been the biggest question with Spain. We assume they have so much talent. We assume they should walk these tournaments with the talent they have, and yet for some reason they seem to cover crop. And because of this fumble, I would say they're now finishing second in their group. So whoever is finishing first in the other group who thought they might be getting Japan, bad luck getting Spain. Have fun with that. Lottie, a bit of a disappointment from Spain?
Absolutely, I'm so disappointed with them. But before we move on to Spain, can we just acknowledge Miyazawa? I don't know if I pronounced that properly. She's had 2 braces in 3 games. For someone who's very much unknown from my point of view, that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, to score 2 against Spain is no easy feat. And if anybody is playing the fantasy football, she's only earning $250,000, so she's a bargain for that midfield. But she's actually a joy to watch. Her and the way she just flits through the midfield. She has all that freedom like Georgia Stanway does, and it's brilliant. But back to Spain, for me, it's just so disappointing. I mean, you look at the talent they've got, and it's just not registering. I mean, this was their first challenge, and I expected them to step up to the plate. Japan did. With all their changes, they definitely did. But Spain, it was so disappointing. Jenny Hermoso, Alexia Putellas, majority of the team were former shadows of themselves during that game. And it's not something I expected. You just look at it and you think, what's happened? I mean, they probably are going to face their toughest fixture next.
Switzerland. We've got Switzerland next.
Yeah. With Leah Volti in the middle and the way that she led in Group A, you're not getting past Leah Volti. She's the one thing that I do love about Arsenal. I'm sorry to put this domestic. We've got so many leaders in this team. They take it internationally, and it's just incredible to see. Like, we've seen Katie McCabe step up. We've seen Leah Volti step up. We've seen Steph Catley step up in absence of Sam Kerr. And it's absolutely massive, and it's just so exciting. There are players. But you've also got the likes of Noel Maritz at the back as well. She's been brilliant. And I just can't see the likes of Alexia Putellas having all that space that she likes, crossing into Jenny Hermoso against Switzerland, because they're so well drilled. If you look at the way they won their group, they haven't let her go in at all. So it'll be interesting to see if they score or not. But they'll have to do better than they did against Japan, because again, Japan are that solid unit. If the team moves to one side, everybody goes to the right. They've got the same sort of movement as Colombia, and I think they've absolutely nailed their formations and the way they move on the pitch perfectly.
Do you think this is the fault of George Vilda and the on-running saga with the players
absolutely.
Opting not to play or not being allowed to play? I mean, it's just, we talk about Canada. We talk about the way the Canada FA have mismanaged their team.
Again, this is mismanaged. I wouldn't be complaining about the defence and the defensive mistakes of Spain's defence if we had players like Mappy Leon there. I can praise Mappy Leon till I'm dead in the grave, literally. But she's so vital to that defence. I mean, you can see how much they miss it. It's a bit like France missing their 2 other forwards with Diani. It's exactly the same situation. But obviously, one's out of injury. They're both out of injuries. So it was really it's disappointing from Spain. They could have done more, for sure, but I don't know how far they're going to go now. I really don't.
Well, they only got 2 shots on target in that game, which I know
For the caliber of players, that is disappointing.
That is very disappointing, and I'm also obviously apologise as well because I slept on Japan as a nation. They didn't have a great World Cup. We all did. I mean, this is a team that's got to back-to-back World Cup finals.
As I've said to you when we're not recording pods, I've always said they've got the perfect. But I've said they've got the perfect balance of raw new talent and experience.
But I mean, I watched Japan play in 2019 when they played England, and they weren't playing anything like this. This is really scary football, really scary attacking, beautifully crafted football, and that is England always play Japan in the World Cup, and so I'm really worried if we do end up having to play them at some point on the way. But I mean, looking forward to the rest of the tournament. Firstly with Spain, they play Switzerland in their last 16 playoff. I think we're going to agree Switzerland are going to give Spain a game. Spain have never won a knockout round of the World Cup. They've always gone out. They get out of the group and then they'll drop off. Do we see them ending that hoodoo quickly? Yes, no, Matt? Spain knockout Switzerland?
I generally do not know about this one, if I'm honest. It could end up going to penalties, if I'm honest. And Switzerland have done really well with penalties in the past. It's how they qualified for the Euros. So if I had to hedge a bet on it, if it ends up being 0-0, goes to penalties, I'd give it to Switzerland.
I could see it going 0-0 penalties in fairness. Lottie, quick one for you.
Yeah, 0-0 AET and then on to penalties, really. Especially if Switzerland decide to park the bus at a 0-0.
I mean, we've learnt that Spain love to pass a sake. They'd rather pass than take a shot. We've seen it in some of the games. They'll get maybe a little mini goal burst and then they'll just pass the rest of the game. I just feel a team like Switzerland so disciplined defensively, which you've seen already at the World Cup. I think if they get their defensive structure right and they frustrate Spain, they could take them all the way to 100 minutes of penalties. As for Japan, they play Norway, fresh from that 6-0 win over the Philippines. Has Hegarese's Norway turned a corner, or will Japan roll them over? I know where my money's at. Lottie?
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be Japan. Sorry, is it Japan they're playing next?
Yeah, Japan. Yeah, Japan, Norway. Yeah. So.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to think about that then. Japan, all the way. I'm looking at maybe 3-1 minimum. Because if you look
Japan
at
play,
Saki Kumagai, she absolutely has total command of that back line, and I have been watching her play, and she knows what it means to be a World Cup champion. She's the only one left from that 2011 squad, and if those younger players are going to learn anything, you need to be learning off her, because she knows what it takes to be a world champion. She could be a 2-time world champion by the time the World Cup's over. And
which would be incredible. And
yes.
Do we? I'll go to you, Matt, in a minute quickly. Matt, do you think it's Norway beat Japan, or do you reckon Norway are going to overcome Japan? Do you reckon which way is going to go?
I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being like an 8-0 situation with Japan. And not to be too harsh, but it just seems like Norway are very much individuals more than a team, and whatever's happening behind the scenes, whether it's because they don't like the coach or not, I think this is the end of Norway, and Japan are just going to fly through, if I'm honest.
I want Japan to go through. I think they've played the best football of the tournament so far. My theory is always a lot of time with these teams that play really, really nice, really good football, and you really get invested in them, and they get to the knockout rounds and they get scuppered. Something happens and they trip up with their shoelaces and end up going out in the last 16. But I really hope they do well. If they got to you look at the talent. If they played at that level, you would think that no team could live with them. Of course, they're a team of quality. And I say that in inverted commas and not as an insult to Costa and Zambia, but the big team they face is Spain, and that is obviously a team which has its own issues. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against Norway. My money is on them. I'm not going to quite go 8-0, but I could definitely see a 2 or 3-1 potentially there. But definitely Japan for me. But that's some of that particular group. So Group C, we're going to cover the rest of the groups right after this very quick break.
Powell makes the nice run. Lovely run by Powell. Cuts it across. Coulthard. Oh, it's 3-0 England. Gillian Coulthard.
And welcome back to the last part of our round 3 round-up. Just 3 games left. We'll start with Group E. Portugal, USA, Vietnam, and the Netherlands. A very intriguingly poised group after the USA drew 1-1 with the Netherlands. And we'll start with the Netherlands first. They played Vietnam, one of the other debutantes, and I think this was a chance for the Netherlands to sort of flex their muscle and show the rest of the world the talent they're in possession of. Matt, you saw, I think, did you see a couple of these goals?
Yes, unfortunately, ITV and their fun and games on the hub, whatever you want to call it now, wasn't fun, and I missed basically the first 20 odd minutes. So it wasn't fun and games, if I'm honest. But watching it back, you could tell that Jonker had basically just told them to go out, enjoy themselves. Didn't matter about the result, although it's a World Cup match. It does matter about the result for them. But it was almost like literally the chains had come off, and they just. I think the best analogy I can come up with is, when it's like a time when you like one of your worst subjects, like whether it's science or school or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you got lunch and then you got or a break. It's almost like you're just rushing to get out the door and everyone and see your friends, and that's essentially what I felt was this game. And I feel a bit hard done by for Vietnam, because they just didn't know what hit them.
It just out of nowhere, they were just spinning constantly, and the Netherlands just kept on firing them in. The goals, there were 7 of them, which I think at the moment is the highest scoring game at the World Cup so far. So that's been the German record. So 7-0 now.
Yeah, drop kick Germany off their pedestal.
Absolutely knocked them off their perch, which is interesting. We mentioned, I think, a few pods ago about the idea there hadn't been these big score lines. But they are, I think, starting to appear a bit more. We haven't hit double figures yet, but this was one of the ones I did think could have gone the whole way. It was 5-0 at half time. So Martin's got the ball rolling with a nice little lob in the box. Snice made it 2 with a good volley placed in the bottom corner. Esme Brute, what a talent this player is. 2 near identical curlers either side of half time. Top bin stuff. Beautiful to watch. We were talking about on the England pod about Lauren James and the fact that she was just scoring worldies of fun. Well, Brooch is doing something very similar for the Netherlands. Very exciting player to look out for. Roord also got a brace of her own, and Van der Donk scored the Netherlands 5th just before half time. Brooch and Roord's second goals from the second half. But what a performance from the Netherlands. I mean, Lottie, Matt rather. Any can the Netherlands go all the way this time around? They did last time.
I think this group is more conjoined than they were at the Euros. There was a lot of bad press around the previous manager in Mark Parsons. Yeah, and it just feels like they've got it's the old Netherlands, although they don't have the Vivianne Miedema effect. They've got other ways that they can win games, and it doesn't matter if she's not there or not, but she's always somehow involved. Just before they left, Jonker was talking to her just to get the ideas flowing, make sure that she was ready for when she does return. Whether or not she was going to make that September squad is another issue. But this Netherlands team is off the mark, and they are hitting great form. I do want to say, though, Danielle van der Donk had a nice little press conference after the game. I don't know if you saw this, but a fan's got her a shirt, with her in the swimming
Swim
cap.
cap. Yes, I've
And she was
seen that
wearing
picture.
it in
Yes.
an interview. It was so brilliant, and she takes everything on the chin as well. And it kind of misses the time where she actually left just before I started to watch Arsenal women properly, and I just kind of go, I'd love to be able to have seen her play properly. I mean, I got to see her at the Euros twice, luckily enough, but she's such a great player on and off the pitch, and if you've got someone like that, I'm a bit surprised she hasn't been given the captaincy role, if I'm honest.
I think she's like vice captain potentially, but she is certainly a lead. She only leads by example on the pitch, and yeah, for me one of the great tragedies was I never properly saw Van Donk at Arsenal. I was at people before me, and she was playing Arsenal sort of 2016 sort of time, and I didn't really follow until 2019. By which time my career was it was on its way down. It was after we won the league title. I never got to see her at a peak. And that is not just with Van der Donk. That's for me. That's the same with the likes of Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry. I never saw them at their best, only when they were at their end of their time at Arsenal. But as for the Netherlands, thumping win. They're into the next round. I'll try and find out who they're going to play next. But before then, Portugal, USA. Now, this was the game I was really, really excited about because there was this really exciting prospect that the USA could go out at the group stage, which would have been amazing. All that needed to happen is that Portugal had to beat the USA. Lottie, did you watch this one?
Yes, I did. And
how close did Portugal get?
Well, put it this way, the reigning current world champions got saved by a post, and that was the most exciting part of the game. And I think before I sit here and droll on about the US and how boring they were, I've got to absolutely praise Portugal and Jess Silva. I mean, they were absolutely incredible. They actually, for them to go up against the USA and not be afraid and actually challenge for that spot, especially as it's their first World Cup after their first Euros, is nothing short of incredible. They got their first goals, they got their first points, they've got their first clean sheets. And for a debutant, it doesn't seem much from neutrals, but that is progress for them as a country. And I'm looking forward to them coming back. I mean, there's been moments where you see Noel Marriott talking to Jess Silva, and there's little things, although we know what's going on the
Come
West
to Arsenal. Come
to
to Arsenal, Jess Silva.
Yeah, no, there is that element to it, but we know on the woe so well what's going on with them. So it's the little things that are actually just great about this, and I think there's a lot of players there that will be looked at to come into the WSL or go into the NWSL because they've done so incredibly. And they put the USA in the back foot. They didn't know what to do or how to get around them. They even had Alex Morgan panicking and firing shots away. Alex Morgan.
Yeah.
I've been waiting all tournament to watch a USA game. I should have not an England game. I've not missed one of those. A USA game, and I thought, this is going to be the juiciest fixture because it's the playoff. It's on at a reasonable time here in England, and I was so bitterly disappointed. Portugal ran that game. I mean, to have 55% possession against the world champions says it all. There was absolutely no control. The shots were off target, and it was just boring. I was disappointed, and whoever they play, if they go on to play Sweden, I can see them going home. Sweden will literally eat them for breakfast. The way Sweden have been playing, they're going home.
So the USA,
unless they step up.
Yeah, so USA finished second. They've only won one game at this World Cup so far.
This is their second worst run in a tournament as well.
Now, I haven't done this research. I'm just thinking, this is me purely thinking off the top of my head, but they didn't score a goal in this World Cup. And the last time I can think of that happening was 2007 when they lost to Brazil.
Yes, that's the year. Sorry, I couldn't remember the year, but that is the stat.
Oh, that was Yeah, 2000. I think it was 4-0. I think it was Brazil. I think it was the semi-final. They just got, and I think that that in itself is an incredible record. To go just for the record of England, the last time they failed to score in a game was in 2015 when we lost 1-0 to France. Since then, we've scored in every game, which again for England is just amazing. But yeah, I'm amazed how sort of disappointing the USA have been. I know there's an element of there's a party in the guard. There's statesmen that it's the last World Cup, like Megan Rapinoe. But yet, to only win one game, Netherlands, I can sort of understand it there that it was a top of the group tussle between the two. But yeah, the Portugal game, you've expected them to have turned up, and I mean, Portugal, they were that close. They were a whip for post, but just sinking them in the 91st minute. That's what it was. If they had nailed that, it would have been an unbelievable moment. As it is, if Sweden, if the Group G goes as it stands, Sweden will play the USA and the Netherlands will play Italy. Now, Sweden did play the USA in the Olympics and Sweden won 3-0, so they'll be confident. But that's going to be one to watch, I think. But USA, I don't know. I rule them out, but then again, this is the USA. They could just turn it on and suddenly kick into gear, find their winning spirit, and they'll romp away to another World Cup. But I think
it feels like something's not clicking like Norway.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to a few people, and they seem to want the manager to go, and he's not the right man for the job anymore.
Well, we'll see what happens in the last 16. But I wouldn't be surprised if the USA slip up. If Sweden are the ones that do top the group, and they play as well as we've seen them play in the especially in that game against Italy. I think the likes of Stina, Rolfo. I don't think the USA will be able to handle the penalty box movements of Amanda Ilestedt. It just
and then with Stina getting on the scoreboard as well, I think she'll be looking for some more.
And it may be hurting to come off the bench and maybe get a goal as well. I mean, really rub salt in the wounds. But that was Group E. Before we sign off, we're just going to quickly dive into Group D. We're not going to cover England because we covered that in a previous pod. Do make sure you check that out. We had some amazing guests on there, G and Ryan. Gladly spent their time with us to talk about England's 6-1 win over China. The other result in the group was, of course, Denmark-Haiti. Haiti departing the tournament as debutantes with no goals and no points. And this was a 2-0 loss, sadly, to Denmark. Curiously, 3 out of the 4 goals have all been penalties. But they haven't discredited themselves, have they, Lottie?
No, absolutely not. They put the Lionesses on their toes, and I think that was our worst performance of the tournaments at the moment. They should be absolutely proud to go toe-to-toe with us and not let us settle down. Losing 1-0 is not a massive loss, but you've got to remember with Haiti, only 5 of those players are signed to clubs, and 5 of those players belong to the French leagues. They need. I feel like, although there's one of them of going over to Lyon, I can't remember who it is. Yeah. Because of her talent, she was absolutely brilliant. I can't think of her name off the top of my head.
I know what you mean.
Demar, maybe
something along that line.
Sounds right. But you've got to remember, these girls. I think the average age is just above 20 years old.
Demornay.
There we go. Thank you, Adam.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
She's now off to Lyon. Lyon fans should be very excited.
Yeah.
But they need to go and find their trade elsewhere if they want to compete on this level. And that's what worries me about Haiti. Although it's their first World Cup since 1987 or 86 in both men's and women's football, their federation needs to back them a bit more, for me personally, because this isn't good enough. Well, they're there for a reason, but in terms of the quality of the group, it wasn't good enough, and that's why they're going home in the way they are. And I don't mean in a disrespectful way at all, but
my feeling watching Haiti was that they didn't look out of place. We've seen debutants in the past lose. I mean, badly. They turn up and just part-timers, as you say, not attached to clubs. I think of Argentina in 2007 losing 11-0 to Germany. famously in 2019, Thailand losing 13-0 to USA. Just these huge disparities in talent.
Yeah.
And then you look at Haiti.
Their losses weren't dramatic.
No, they were just a 1-0 loss. And you just think that another day, if I think they've been desperately unlucky in their first two games against China, against England. There are moments when they can feel like they deserve the better rub of the green. If they had a penalty awarded against China, they got actually flipped over. They had chances against England where Earps put up a brilliant save to keep them out, and he also missed some really good opportunities. But the moments were there for them. They just didn't fall their way. And I don't think they, again, themselves at all. 2-0 against Denmark. I think my understanding is, listening on the radio, that they pushed Denmark all the way. The goals were a penalty from Pernille Harder. There was an early goal from Simone Boyd that got chalked off for a very much a marginal offside, but correct decision. There was another goal for Denmark that got chalked off. There was a foul on the keeper before the ball was eventually put in. But Charles Gard sealed the points in the 100th minute to make it 2-0. Denmark are through. England are through. As we know, England will play Nigeria. Denmark will play Australia, I believe. Is that right? So, Australia, Denmark. Thoughts? What? I'll come to you first.
Denmark are going home. I'm sorry, but they're not going to let this go.
But this is interesting. This is Sam Kerr versus Pernille Harder. You know, comrades turned enemies.
That is if Sam Kerr gets on the bench.
That's true.
But if she's injured, I don't think so. I mean, it's been reported she's training very minimally. So whether that's true or not, we don't know, because Australia have been really tight-lipped about it. But even if she doesn't play, if Australia can continue the momentum they got from that last game to qualify for the round of 16, Denmark are going home. As much as I absolutely respect Pernille Harder, Katrine Mollakul from Arsenal, I just don't think they have the energy to get past Australia and deal with the likes of Rasso. Cooney crosses in, Steph, Catley and Caitlin Foord on that left-hand side. I just don't think they'll cope with it. But I think as long as Alana Kennedy can stay switched on, I think they will come away with a clean sheet.
I mean, Denmark haven't really been, I'd say, that impressive in the group. They only won 1-0 against China. It was a very late winner. But at the same time against us, I mean, they had when we dipped, they had chances. There was one that flashed wide. There was one they hit the post. They should have equalised. And I think there is talent there. Harder is a brilliant forward talent. We know what Mollakul is in the midfield. It does feel like there is a decent enough team there that could give Australia a game. But I just think you're right. Think of the likes of Rasso, likes of Fowler, Foord, Catley. Even if Kerr is fit, maybe to come off the bench. Home support. I mean, if Australia went out to Denmark in the last 16, I mean, it would be devastating, especially after the goodwill built up. But then you only have to look at the Nigeria game and think, if they're not on it 100%, Denmark are quite solid defensively. All it takes is one mistake and Harder.
Absolutely. The thing is, I just think they need to take lessons learned from Nigeria. If you see Pernille Harder coming, do not panic. She will be a decoy to split your defence in half, like Australia was. So they need to be very careful on that front. We know what Pernille Harder can do. We know how lethal she is in front of that goal. But you need to remember, there's a set of players behind her. If she's given that space where she likes to float up top and where she can float between the lines, they'll have to be careful of her. But they've also got to remember the wingers. They've got to remember the midfielders. And even the defenders, if we look at for a team like Sweden, they need to be very fully aware of that sort of thing. Otherwise, they're staying at home, put it that way. They're not coming back to the tournament. Yeah.
Matt, I'm going to quickly swing over to you. Australia, Denmark, which way do you see this one going?
Just before that, Pernille Harder got the 100th goal of this tournament.
Oh, superb.
So, yes, just to put it out there.
Round of applause all round.
We are on over 100 goals for this tournament. So because everyone else has been the stats people today, so I thought I'd throw my stat out there.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But
Oh, I'm so sorry for stealing your job, Seth.
Stat Matt. Matt the stat.
You have my cap. Anyway,
Thank
Denmark against Australia. It's not, I think it's going to be one of these games where you'd expect the home crowd will probably become the 12th man, woman, mascot, whatever you want to call them.
Person.
Whatever they want to call themselves. I think that's going to be too much for Denmark. I don't think. To quote Shania Twain, they haven't impressed me very much.
No.
And and I just don't think that they're very chaotic, if I'm honest, Denmark, in the ways that they're supposed to be defensively disciplined, but you've seen Lauren James score that worldie from outside the box, so that could be exploited. Caitlin Foord can do her usual that she does against Tottenham, where she comes into the box, no one marks her, and she can just curl it past the goalkeeper. Steph Catley can take her free kicks and curl it around the defence without much issue. I just think Australia will have too much to handle. With too much to handle for Denmark, and if I had to put a scoreline on it, I think Australia got to win this 3-0.
That comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm going to go against the grain here. I think Australia are going to slip. I just think that like the Nigeria game, I just think it's going to be there for them, and they're going to fumble it. And I'm going to go 2-1 to Denmark. But I think there's a very good case for Australia getting through, and then Australia should get through. It's the home advantage and the talent they've got. They should be getting through. And if a host nation gets to the quarterfinals, I think that's a pretty good World Cup. You want the host to go through, and losing. I said in our previous pod that losing at the beginning of the pod, losing New Zealand as host is a devastating blow for the tournament because you want them to go far. And Australia are now flying that flag alone. We'll have to wait and see how far they go. But that's it. That's the end of our round 3 roundup. Plenty of more round 3 fixtures to come tomorrow. If you're listening, then it'll be today, and future days up to the rest of the week as the rest of the group stages come to a close. It just leaves me now to say farewell to my superb co-host, the lovely Lottie and the magnificent Matt. Matt, where can we find you on the socials?
So you can find me at MattLR28.
And Lottie, where can one find you?
At Lottie AWFC. Oh no, it's Lottie _AWFC. Sorry, I'm very sleepy.
I'm also very sleepy now. For listeners who don't know, we've been. It's now 11 o'clock, and we've been doing this since 7. We've been doing a lot. There's been a lot to get through, and there is plenty more to enjoy. So make sure you keep your tuned in and keep up there with the World Cup. If you really want to follow me on the Twitter sphere and see whatever nonsense I spew, not only on the pod but on there as well, it's at Adam Salter 4. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for listening in, for subscribing, for liking, etc., etc., etc. Please keep on following. Please keep on liking. Please keep on listening, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.